Working the night shift at the old retail store wasn't my ideal job, but it paid the bills. The empty aisles and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights created an eerie ambiance that sent shivers down my spine. Little did I know that those dimly lit corridors held a sinister secret. As the clock struck midnight, the store seemed to take on a life of its own. The merchandise cast long, distorted shadows that danced along the walls, and the air grew heavy with a musty scent. I went about my tasks, restocking shelves and straightening displays, trying to ignore the feeling that I was being watched. One night, as I was sorting through a stack of clothes, I heard a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was just the wind outside, but the sound grew more distinct, like someone murmuring just beyond the edge of hearing. I looked around, my heart racing, but there was no one in sight. I continued my work, trying to brush off the unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. But the whispers persisted, growing louder and more insistent. It was as if they were coming from all around me, a cacophony of voices that I couldn't understand. I moved through the store, the whispers following me like a haunting melody. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and a chill ran down my spine. I rounded a corner and froze. There, at the end of the aisle, stood a figure in tattered clothing, its face obscured by shadows. My heart raced as I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice quivering. The figure didn't respond, but its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light. And then, with a slow and deliberate movement, it raised its arm and pointed towards the back of the store. Terrified but unable to resist, I followed its gaze, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices that seemed to be urging me forward. The air grew colder as I reached the back of the store, where an old mirror stood against the wall. My reflection stared back at me, but something was off. The reflection's eyes were dark and hollow, and its lips moved in sync with the whispers that now filled the room. I reached out to touch the mirror, and the surface rippled like water. With a surge of courage, I stepped through. On the other side, I found myself in a different world. The store was gone, replaced by a desolate landscape bathed in an eerie blue light. The whispers surrounded me, their voices overlapping and intertwining like a haunting symphony. I realized that I was not alone. Other figures moved in the distance, their movements jerky and unnatural. As I watched, the figures turned towards me, their eyes glowing with the same ethereal light. The whispers grew louder, their words incomprehensible yet filled with a sense of urgency. It was as if they were trying to convey a message, to share a secret from beyond the veil of the living. And then, with a jolt, I was back in the store, standing before the mirror. My heart pounded, and my hands trembled as I stared at my reflection, which now seemed to hold a depth of knowledge and sorrow. The whispers had faded, leaving me in silence. I left the store that night, my mind reeling from the experience. I never returned to that place, but the memory of the whispers and the otherworldly figures stayed with me. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed something beyond our reality, something that should have remained hidden. Working the late shift at Wharton's department store was never anyone's idea of a dream job. But I needed the paycheck to get through college. The place always had an eerie vibe after hours, and as I manned the cash register, the dim overhead lights seemed to cast long shadows that danced along the aisles. One night, a relentless rainstorm pounded against the windows, creating an unsettling rhythm that matched the unease in the air. I was rearranging items on the shelves, trying to keep busy, when I heard it, a faint whisper, like someone speaking just beyond my range of hearing. My heart raced, and I looked around, convinced it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But the whisper persisted, growing clearer and more distinct. It was as if someone was murmuring unintelligible words right behind me. My gaze swept the rows of empty aisles, but there was no one there. My hand trembled as I reached for the store's intercom, thinking that maybe someone had sneaked in after hours. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I called out, my voice shaking. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating, and then the whisper came again, this time accompanied by a chilling breeze that ruffled my hair. Find, remember, don't forget. My heart raced, and a shiver ran down my spine. The intercom crackled to life, emitting a soft, static-filled sound that seemed to amplify the whispers. Panic welled up within me as I stumbled back from the counter, my eyes darting around the store. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice wavering. The whisper grew louder, morphing into a chorus of hushed voices that seemed to come from all directions. I felt a cold, clammy hand close around my wrist, and I turned to find no one there. The grip tightened, and I let out a strangled scream. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the whispers ceased. The intercom fell silent, and the grip on my wrist disappeared. The store was plunged into an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breaths. I stumbled towards the exit, my heart pounding, convinced that I had lost my mind. As I pushed open the heavy glass doors, the rain soaked me to the bone. I glanced back at the store, the neon sign flickering eerily against the darkened sky. The feeling of being watched lingered, and I could have sworn I saw faint figures moving behind the glass windows. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the memory of that night. I tried to convince myself that it had been a trick of the mind, a result of exhaustion and anxiety. But deep down, I knew there was something more to it. The whispers, the cold touch, and the feeling of being trapped in a place where the boundaries of reality and the supernatural collided. They were all too vivid to dismiss. Wharton's department store closed down shortly after that night, leaving behind an empty building that seemed to hold the secrets of its own. The rain might have washed away the physical traces of that night, but the memory of the whispers, the touch, and the fear still lingers. A haunting reminder that some places are forever tied to the supernatural realm.